Well, hello and welcome to another outdoor children's church. Hopefully soon we'll be able to be back together inside of our church building. Well, if you remember last week, we left off in the book of Acts where Paul had been brought all the way to see the governor, Felix, and the Jewish leaders were called to come and explain to Felix why they were upset with Paul in the first place. Well, sure enough, the chief priests and the Pharisees showed up, and so they brought Paul before the governor, and they were explaining to the governor that Paul is a horrible person, that he causes riots everywhere he goes, and now he's desecrated the temple. He deserves to die. Paul got up to defend himself and said, "Hold on a second." He said, "I didn't preach to a crowd. I didn't gather together a riot. All I did is went into the temple to fulfill a vow. Next thing I know, these guys start grabbing me, making a big mob scene and beating me." He said, "You know what, Governor? The people who were beating me should be the ones here on trial, not me. As a matter of fact," he said, "the Pharisees who are here actually agree with me on one major thing, and that is that God can raise people from the dead." Poor Felix didn't know what to do. See, it sounded to him like this was just an argument about God and certainly nothing worth going to prison or dying for. But Felix didn't pass judgment right away. He sent the chief priests and Pharisees away and said that he would proclaim judgment. But he waited. There's a reason. See, he was secretly hoping that Paul would offer him a bribe, pay him some money, so he could set him free. But Paul didn't want to do that. You know why? Well, for one, he didn't want to pay him money. But more importantly, remember what Jesus had told him? "You're going to be my witness to Rome." Well, you can't witness to Rome if you get sent home, now can you? So he stayed there. And every time that Felix called him up, he talked to Felix about Jesus and about the scriptures and about believing in Jesus. And one of the times, Felix got so troubled he was shaking, and he said, I'm not ready to make a decision one way or the other. I'll make it at a more convenient time. And he left Paul in jail for 2 years. But he gave Paul some privileges. He let his friends come visit whenever they wanted. So it wasn't like he was like a normal prison, but he was under house arrest. He had to stay where he was. Well, when it came time for the governorship to change over 2 years later, a new governor named Festus was coming into power, and Felix explained to Festus why Paul was in prison. And so Festus thought, that's interesting. Now, the Jewish leaders from Jerusalem had sent him a message saying, "Please send Paul to Jerusalem so he can stand trial. We would like that." Now, Festus wanted to get on their good side and set things up on a positive note as the new governor. So he brought in Paul and said, "Are you willing to go to Jerusalem to stand trial for the crimes that you've been accused of?" And Paul said, "Festus, you know I'm not guilty of any crime. I know I'm not guilty of any crime. All I do is what I'm told to do. And if I go there, it's going to go very poorly. So, look, you know I'm innocent. I know I'm innocent. No. If you're going to send me to Jerusalem, then I appeal to Caesar." Now, you need to understand, as a Roman citizen, if you thought that you were being wrongly accused and a judge was about to pass judgment the wrong way, as a Roman citizen, it was your right to appeal to Caesar. What that meant was, whatever judgment they gave had to be put on hold, and you would get shipped all the way off to the emperor to hear your case. Now, you got to remember, this is kind of a chancy thing because the emperor could say live or die. So you had to be really careful when you exercise that one. But Paul wasn't afraid to say that because he already knew where he was supposed to be going, and that was one way to get there. So Festus looked at Paul and said, "All right, you appeal to Caesar you will go." That made his life easy because then he could tell the Jewish leaders, he appealed to Caesar, what do I do? Well, a couple of days later, Festus got a visitor. King Agrippa and his sister came to visit. And Festus was explaining some of the different things that had happened, and he happened to just mention that he had Paul in jail. And King Agrippa said, "Really? I would really like to hear Paul." So Festus said, "Well, I can arrange that." So the very next day, they had a big crowd of people around, and they brought in Paul. So Paul wasn't sure what was going on, but when he walked in the room and saw Festus and King Agrippa, Well, he got really excited, and he said, "King Agrippa, I am so glad I get to talk to you." Because, see, King Agrippa was an expert in the Jewish customs. And he said, "King, you know the Jewish customs and the laws. I am well known by the Jewish people because I've lived there my whole life. Now, you need to understand something. I was a very strict Pharisee. I followed all the rules and was very zealous. As a matter of fact, I used to persecute everyone who believed in Jesus the Nazarene. I was even going to Damascus to go find more of those believers and bring them back to Jerusalem in chains. And when I was on the road to Damascus, suddenly there's a bright light that shone all around me, and I fell to the ground. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, 'Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?' And I said, 'Who are you, Lord?' And the voice said, 'I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. Now you will be my servant, and you will be my witness to both the Jews and the Gentiles.' And Paul said, 'And that is what I've done. I've been faithful to the call that he's given me. I've gone around to speak to the Jews and to the Gentiles about Jesus, about how he is God's son, about how he came and lived life on earth, about how he suffered for us and how he died, but he didn't stay dead. He rose again. And because he rose again, we all have the opportunity to have life and life to the fullest.' And as he was saying this, Festus jumped up and shouted, 'Paul, you're crazy. You're a madman. Your great learning has made you insane.' And Paul said, 'Whoa, I'm not crazy. King Agrippa, you know what I'm saying is true. King Agrippa, do you believe what the scriptures say? I know you do.' And King Agrippa interrupted him and said, 'Whoa, Paul, you think you can have me listen to you for just a few minutes and I'll become a Christian?' And Paul said, 'Well, I don't know if I can or I can't. But I wish that everyone who is listening to me here today could be just like me.' Well, except for the chains, of course. Well, Paul was released from the room, and Festus and Agrippa were talking, and they both agreed there was absolutely no reason for Paul to be in prison. But he had appealed to Caesar, so to Caesar he must go. And that's the end of our story. Well, as you know, we have quiz questions at the end of our story, so just in case you're so busy listening to the birds that are singing in the background or got distracted, go back, start it over, listen to the whole video over again, and listen to the story very carefully because those details are very important, okay? Okay, if you're ready now, we'll go through our questions. Question number 1, and remember, type the answers down in the comments below. I love reading those. Question number 1, what did you like about the story? What pleased you? Question number 2, what did you not like about the story? What displeased you? Question number 3, what does this story tell us about people? What can we learn about people from this story, the nature of people? Question number 4, what does this story tell us about God? What can we learn about God, the nature of God, what God is like? Question number 5 says, what should I do differently because of this story? And remember, this should be answered at I should something. And then question number 6, who should I tell this story to? I look forward to seeing your answers, and I look forward to joining you next week for another Children's Church.